Let's speak to Einar Tangen, who is a China analyst. Einar joins us from Bangkok. Einar, before we get into the details of this and the possible reaction from Beijing, there has been a rise in violence in the northwest, in the autonomous region there in China. The Beijing government calls them terror attacks. Does it blame the Uyghurs' religion for the rise in violence?
No, they actually talk about it in terms of extremism and separatism. They have in the past referenced a group called the East Islamic Turkic Movement. This is a pan-Asian movement. Different people estimated strength at different sizes, but they believe that this is a group that is using religion as a basis for saying that there should be an independent Uyghur region.
The details from these leaked documents are so astonishing, and it appears equally astonishing that the Chinese ambassador to the UK should simply say it's fake news. How can he say that?
Well, I think you have to look at it. I mean, the universal reaction in Beijing has been kind of so what? And the issues there really go back to this kind of fundamental difference between East and West. You know, when we talk about, in the West, when we talk about human rights and things like that, we tend to put the individual above, just slightly above the needs of society, whereas in the East, it's the exact opposite. They say the group is always ahead of the individual and that they have to sacrifice in order to do that. So from China's perspective, as a one-party state, they don't feel they have a choice except to make sure that there's absolute security. Now, over the last 3 years, since they implemented these policies of what they call retraining, there have been no terrorist incidents. So from their perspective, what they're doing is working. Now, they kind of scratch their head, and when they look at the West, because they see many instances where there has been repression of different groups or so-called repression by others in internal matters. I mean, China doesn't understand why the U.S. government continues to allow so many guns, despite the fact there's so many gun deaths, right? They don't, you know, they look at the detention of immigrants and the separation of their children from the families, and they say, why is the U.S. criticizing others for trying to maintain order in their society? So it's unfortunately one of these issues that's never going to be resolved because people do not understand the cultural assumptions can be different in different societies.
Sure, okay. If cultural differences are at the bottom of international reaction to these leaked documents, it doesn't surely justify what possibly we could describe as ethnic dilution, because not contained in these leaked documents, but in previous reports, there have been suspicions that the Chinese government is forcing Uyghur girls and young women to marry Chinese nationals who are not Muslims. There have also been allegations that people in these internment camps are literally being brainwashed and having to repeat day after day and hour after hour how Xi Jinping is the supreme leader of China. Those sorts of phrases being sort of driven into people's minds. There are also other details. In 2017, there was a 9-page memo written by a senior member of the Communist Party, Chu Hailun. And the details that are in that memo, Chu Hailun saying that detainees should never be allowed to escape, that discipline should be increased, there should be punishment of behavioral violations, that people should have a fixed classroom seat, a fixed time to go to the toilet, a fixed place in a queue, and that if there's any deviation, there should be punishment. You, Einar, said that the reaction in Beijing is so what? Is there an international issue here in that those 5 countries that have seats on the Permanent Security Council of the UN can literally say, so what? Because there can't be any international action against them because of their power at the United Nations?
Well, as I've said, I mean, there are issues. I start going to the Security Council. I don't know where Russia would be on this. I don't know how the U.S. would necessarily differentiate their behavior from what China is doing. Now, I mean, I'm not saying as somebody from the West, this does not sit well with me, but I do understand that there are different countries and different cultures. I don't know that it's necessarily a good thing for any one, even if it is dominant, cultural perspective, be out there. From the Chinese point of view, they're doing only what they have to do. If you go and talk to the Chinese people and you say, this is what they're doing, From their perspective, it's re-education, making sure these people understand and can speak the language where they can get a job. Their concern is that by separating themselves, only studying the Quran, not learning a craft or an ability to work, that in essence, you're creating an underclass that will be, literally oppressed, not oppressed, but feel that they're oppressed because they can't do anything, lose hope, and then become terrorists and extremists if they're not already leaning in that direction. So, if you I wish you had the opportunity to walk the streets of China and to see that this is a very, very different cultural perspective.
Einar, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Einar Tangen, China analyst, speaking to us from Bangkok.